I think there's something about life where it's like, you can have a certain amount of pressure. And I think that we were gifted with the perfect amount of pressure to like where we almost broke, but there were enough people holding us up that the floor never fell through on us.
Welcome back to Case Studies. I'm with my dear friend, Emily McCormick, that we haven't been long friends.
No. A couple years? 3 years?
A couple years. You were obviously friends with Chelsea first.
Yeah.
And then you and Adam become, my really good friends and our really good friends. But I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a long time just because you're exceptional. Like you truly are. Like I watch what you're doing. I think about this. Me and Chels talk about this a lot. She has this core group of friends.
Yeah.
And they're so exceptional. Mm-hmm. And I think iron really does sharpen iron, and they all like you guys motivate each other to just like go for it. You're just like, it's a really healthy, like sisterhood,
Yes.
It's so cool.
It is like the biggest gift ever, because I think sometimes in relationships, things get competitive and weird. And there's that desire to like, drag down the boiling frog. And so it is the biggest gift to have people who are like,
somehow you guys do it though. Somehow you guys are like so supportive and all run in very independent directions, and so cool. So can't wait to kind of hear what you're working on today, but also go back to the roots.
Yeah.
And just really kind of break down your story.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited. I just have to say, I've listened to a bunch of your case studies, and they're so good because we were chatting about like, why is Casey so good at this? It's because you're so raw and you're so real, and you just get to the nitty gritty of a life and let somebody kind of elaborate on their story, and it becomes a part of your day. I feel like I've been sitting in a room having conversations with you for the last couple of weeks as I've listened to these.
So fun.
So you do a good job.
Thank you.
It's very fun.
Thank you. We have done some fun ones. We did one. Do you know Bonnie Corden?
Yes, I do.
So I didn't know her. But she's one of Chelsea's heroes.
She's amazing.
And so I got hit up by this guy, Curtis Beasley, who's a friend of ours that raises money.
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey, would you like Bonnie Corden on your podcast?" And I'm like, "Who's that?" And Chelsea's like, No. Like, you want her. She's amazing. And so anyway, we had her on, and it was like, I'm sitting here listening to this story, and I'm just like, you are an outstanding human. Like, you fire me up, just hearing, even where she's at in life now, she's striving and she's going for it. And she just has like this energy to like do good. And I just love that.
I know. And hers is so good. She's such a neat lady because it's almost like post-career, post some serious callings for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, post all these things. And yet she has this other journey that
still
she's
going for
on
it.
Right
yeah.
now.
And like with cool. Like, I don't see any disconnect, but, and that's kind of a big, like, one of my big philosophical beliefs is that there is no difference between home life and church life and work life, that they're all just life.
Yeah.
And
we're all
kind of like on this journey together, and you see her in a very public business life, and then even a more public kind of ecclesiastical life, and then in a administrative school. It's all kind of the same thing. It's just she's just striving to, and you're the exact same way. Like, and I think that's the reason why I wanted to chat with you, is like to really get under the hood as far as like, where do you get your drive, and where is this? Because it's almost like this insatiable desire to just go make a dent in the world. It's fun to watch. Like I love to just kind of watch you go for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably why we're friends, because you have it too, right? It's just this like nonstop feeling that like I could do a little bit more, do a little bit better. Yeah.
So maybe let's kind of give me 2025 today. Give me kind of the recap of what life looks like today.
Okay. So today I run this nonprofit organization called the Policy Project. And we're basically, we are at this like interesting intersection of policies. So like the boring state laws that nobody wants to talk about. It isn't politics, but people get really confused with that. So policy, philanthropy, so raising like philanthropic dollars to kind of help push these policies, and community, like building community and making sure that community kind of helps us do this. Policy is like a really interesting, I started this nonprofit like 6 years ago. And the idea was I was so kind of dissatisfied with what I was seeing as my options for doing good in the world. And that's like of course has its own backstory, which I'm super happy to give you, but
I actually would love that.
Okay. Well, and I can give it to you. So I did not start in policy. I didn't know anything about like politics, policy. I didn't know anything about nonprofits. I just had I feel like I was raised in a very regular, to me, a very regular neighborhood. It was in South Salt Lake, a neighborhood called Holiday. I had 2 parents, part of the majority religion here, 4 siblings. But when I was young, when I was around 9, my mom was diagnosed with this brain tumor, and she was bedridden ever since being diagnosed. So she came home from the hospital, but she'd kind of lost her sense of her ability to logic, her ability to kind of participate in the world. And so she didn't leave her bed. She gained 120 pounds and really became kind of a difficult person to live with. She was nocturnal and stuff. And so I think when I was relatively young, I was in the super functional neighborhood, and part of a great, incredible community. I could not have asked for a better community, but she really, really struggled. And you don't know this when you're a kid and you're kind of going through it and having a hard time, but it ended up making such a big impact in my life, showing me that you can do hard things and actually that sometimes those hard things can make you better.
10 years old?
Yeah. I was like 10 when it happened. And then she lived she died when I was 19. So she lived another decade, like being in bed this whole time.
But she didn't fully live.
No.
She wasn't the same person.
No. And it's so sad. When brain surgery and kind of what that's like. She had she actually lost part of her brain, when she was going through these surgeries, a craniectomy, it was cut off. And so she literally lost her ability to reason. So you can imagine being a crazy teenager, who just thinks they know everything, and then kind of intersecting with a mother who was just kind of I had a friend who died in a car crash, and I remember just being hysterical about it, and her coming in and being like, I will call the cops on you if you don't calm down. And it's wait, what? This is crazy.
Just no sense of
there wasn't
empathy or
Yeah, she just didn't have the ability anymore. And so she went from being this really functional person into kind of being just a really difficult person. I actually read a book. I did not describe it this way. But When Breath Becomes Air, if you haven't read that book, it is.
No, is it good?
So beautiful. Yeah, it is such a beautiful book, but it's about this neurosurgeon and kind of dealing with different people who have had brain surgeries. And he describes when a brain surgery goes wrong, it can turn a human into a monster. And I would say that was a little bit it became pretty tricky.
So hard.
Yeah. But when you're going through it, you're just kind of
this is just life.
Yeah, it's just life. I'm just going to kind of get through this. And
But I think about my kids right now. I've got 16-year-old to 3-year-old, but I've got 3 of them from 10 to 16.
Yep.
And I know they're hard with me and Chelsea trying to be on our game. I
totally
I actually can't imagine what life would be like for me as a husband with Chelsea crazy or not there or not the same person. And I can't imagine what it'd be like for our kids. And so that's the one that, when you step into it, from today, being a mom or being a dad, you're oh, that's a void. And that's a heavy burden to carry for everybody.
Yeah.
Dad, kids, siblings.
Yeah. It was. I actually look at my dad, and at the time, I remember people kind of making little comments wow, I can't believe your dad is staying with your mom. And I was excuse me?
What are you talking
about? Of course he's staying with my mom. You just are so protective.
Yeah.
But now that my mom died when she was 44, I'm 46. And I think about that, and it's
she was so young.
She was so young. She was 35 when she got sick, just like a baby, and really changed the trajectory of all of our lives. Weirdly, I would say in an amazing way, actually. I think it gave us some grit and some stick-to-itness that maybe we wouldn't have had otherwise. I don't know. It's just my only life experience, so that's what I know. But I look at my dad and I think, what an incredible example to me, like as a 46-year-old woman. I mean, my dad stuck with this woman who was in bed. She wasn't nice to him. She was amazing when she was full capacity. There's no question. She was an incredible woman. This was out of her hands and out of her control. But he would go into her room. She was nocturnal. She would stay up all night long and like watch television, blaring television. My dad would sleep in the same room and he would rub her feet every single night. And to me, it was like, of course he is. I mean, that's what you do. He married her, like that was my perspective. And now being 46 and thinking like, man, what if my husband would have had this happen 9 years ago?
So heavy.
Would I have the character and ability and, would I be able to like stick through something like that? It was a crazy time. So needless to say, but the fact that he stayed, I think really was the greatest lesson he could have ever taught us as kids. It was like, he was a workaholic. He wasn't around much. He wasn't a perfect parent.
Work had to have been his therapy.
Without a question.
Like when I'm going there, I'm like, I'd be working 90 hours. Like I wouldn't want to go home. Like, it had to have been like this is going to sound bad, but like my young kids right now are hard.
They're so hard.
It's like wrestling like wild animals to get them to bed.
Got a few of those.
And like, it's not like I'm going home to relax. I'm like, like, okay, show up with good energy and like, and that's with like some little kids. Like imagine if that was you going home to see Adam and you're like taking deep breaths to like, hey, I need to show up and like, another point that I'm just thinking about right now is like, if I don't get good sleep, I'm a different human.
100%.
So to have like
these
10
years and years
of not great sleep just makes the other hours harder. Like your dad, I don't know him, but he needs like
a little metal.
He needs a lot of medals. Yeah. He needs
And he's literally, you'll meet him and be like, this is the nicest human I've ever encountered in my life. As we call him skinny little Kenny. Yeah. He's just this nice little guy, and it's just, he got the crap beat out of him, and instead of like letting it destroy him, he just got stronger, and just became
fires me up,
more loving.
Because injustice, just like, I'm such a big believer that like God has a plan for all of us. Mm-hmm. And like, I remember going to this Tony Robbins event 7 or 8 years ago now. And it's funny because everybody has their Tony Robbins changed my life story. Yeah. But he legitimately changed my life. I went to this event and he brought in this idea that I've adopted that's been so helpful for me. This idea that your hardest day can be your best day. Mm. And that life is happening for us. Yeah. And not to us. And I think about just even that experience for yourself. You're like, what if that wouldn't have happened? Mm-hmm. Like think of the grit and think of the determination and the resilience and those muscles that you wouldn't have got. Yeah. And like today, the world, your kids, your husband, everybody gets the benefit of these hard experiences. Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. And I've heard you say that before and I absolutely love it. Just that thought that life it happens for you and you go through the anger, like you have those moments where you're just like, I feel like when I was in college and I would see friends with their moms or getting married or having a baby or like some of those like key moments where it's like, I should have a mom. Like this actually isn't fair. And I'm like ticked. I think that it was like, those were really hard moments in my life. And now at 46, she died when I was 19, like I mentioned. And at 46, this makes me like sad to say, but I wouldn't go back and change it. And I would love to have her, but I think that when you've had someone leave your life and you've had that struggle, it just maybe gives you a little bit of a sixth sense. Like life is bigger than what is right in front of me. And life is short. This is like a moment in this is a moment in time, but time goes beyond our
lives, you know? It extends beyond like our mortality. And so what are we going to do with our mortality and how are we going to lean in? And especially for me, you know, where I was given so much, I gave a community that would not let me I was given a community that would not let me fail.
Yeah.
They refused to let our family fail.
Which is another like whole different conversation. Which is just like how important community is.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? To like raising a village.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. It's super touching. I mean, that's the good stuff in life. You think about all of these moms and dads and parents that were kind of just looking out for you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's actually amazing. And I think like I would never be, you know, I would never be in the position I'm in if a million hands would not have rushed in those moments. You know, there were a lot of like lonely times, a lot of hard times. And I think it was really neat to watch, you know, friends, especially their moms, but their dads too, lean in. Like when my mom passed, it was like all of these little butterflies, you know, kind of came in just to make sure I was okay. And so I was angry. I had other issues at that time, like serious, you know, like I had an eating disorder. I was angry. I was a perfectionist. Like I had all of these issues that kind of came flooding in. I think probably because there was no control in my life. You know, It was a pretty crazy, chaotic youth. But I think of these people who just fluttered like around me and would not let me, they just would not, they refused to let me fall all the way, you know? And so because of that, like I know my life is what it is, not because of me, it's because of all the hands.
Wow, that's
and like,
really cool. So,
you know, all the people that
going
came
back
in.
to this foundation though, so how many siblings did you have?
So I have 3 siblings. I have an older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. And we all, you know, like growing up, we all had we're regular siblings, of course, just like everyone fought a ton, thought I'd kill all of them at different points. But everybody is actually, and everybody like kind of experiences hardship in such a different way, you know, just depending on where they were growing up. My older brother was a couple years older than me. So he was engaged to be married when my mom died. So he was in a different kind of phase of life. I was in college. My younger brother was young, you know, he's like 4 years younger than me. So he was like 15, just had struggled. You know, she'd been sick most of his life and kind of was a kid who lived in a basement and played video games and was overweight and really struggled, you know? And then my younger sister who really had never known a mother, like my mom got sick when she was like 1 or 2. And so had never known it. And she was emotional and had a really hard time. And watching them all grow up, I would have guessed like we should, based on that, like kind of the story, we should have some people who are addicted to drugs, people who are, you know, teen pregnancies, like these kinds of things. And for whatever reason, and I really do think that part of that is just like we had, you know, extended family who cared, we had neighbors who cared, and a dad who loved us, and a mom who loved us. We knew she was crazy, but she loved us. You know, she adored us. And she basically, I think the 2 things that she gave us like during that time, it was like the sense that we were totally loved, but also the sense that like we could do anything. There was always this assumption that we were like, you're the best. Like you are the cream of the crop. It was like, we were like a ragamuffins, like not just kind of disasters, you know? And I think of it was like that came through though 100%. It was just like, you are the best and I love you. I'm also, you know, and I think that really came through. My siblings have all moved on to be really, I mean, we're all a little crazy, but really successful humans, like in families, in loving long-term relationships, you know, having great jobs, running businesses and doing awesome things,
so
you know?
Cool.
Yeah. So it really is a testament to like, I think there's something about life where it's like, you can have a certain amount of pressure. And I think that we were gifted with the perfect amount of pressure to like where we almost broke, but there were enough people holding us up that the floor never fell through on us. Like it maintained, it was like this. And there were times that it was starting to creak, but like all these people held it up for us. And so I think that that's the difference, right? Like, because, my work now is a lot about people who are massively disadvantaged in this lifetime, right? Like in their time and mortality, that they're really, really, really struggling.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is I had that foundation that would not let me break. And for these people that I kind of work with now or really try to be invested in now, they don't have that. They don't have the layers of grandparents and aunts and neighbors and church congregation members and all these people that are just not going to let them fall, right?
Yeah.
Like, and when you don't have that, like that's where my wealth came in strong. It came in strong from like all the people that
community
showed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you talk about like, I think about Chelsea, your wife, who's like one of my dear friends and just such a lovely example and dear person for me. That's where that like nourishment and trying to like lift people instead of push them down. I think that's like really where it came from.
So cool. So finish up high school. When did you go to college?
Yeah. So I finished high school and I grew up in Salt Lake, as I mentioned. My grandpa was a professor at the University of Utah. And back then it was not cool to go to BYU. It was like, oh, all the weird kids go to BYU. Oh, I remember, my mom being like, if you go there, somebody's going to propose to you the first time they meet you. I'm like, okay. So I was like really conflicted though. I'd applied to BYU. I kind of had this sense like I had such a big obligation and draw to taking care of my family.
You want to stay close.
I'd been the mom, like I wasn't a good one, but but I was the one, at 14, I was driving the car to go get groceries. What did I buy? I bought Skittles and cakes because that's what a 14-year-old wants to eat, but I perfectly forged my mom's name so I could write all of her checks. Like that was the day of checks. And I would write, I would pay bills. I would go to the grocery store. Like I was the mom. So I was desperately concerned about my little siblings.
Yeah.
But I think that I was also at a point in life where I was like, if I go to the U and I stay here, nothing changes. And I
need to get out.
I was kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
I think I was like, I didn't know, I couldn't put words to it at the time, but I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, I'd applied for BYU. I got into the U, thought I might do that. But I just felt this huge pull to go to BYU. Don't think it's for everybody, but I was so felt like I should go there. And I remember talking to my dad and just bawling and being like, I don't want to go to BYU. This is not it. This is not where I want to be. But feeling so pulled to it, I decided to go. I think it felt safe where it was like, I'm 45 minutes from my family. I can cruise back up on the weekends, help with grocery shopping, help with these things, but also kind of have this little separate life. And that was like a critical, junction for me, to be able to say, I'm going to start to have this little bit of independence. And so I went to BYU. Didn't know, had some awesome roommates, didn't know what I wanted to major in. Along with kind of the community I was raised in was a really strong culture of, women. I didn't know any women who worked. Actually, I knew one woman. She was in my ward. And I remember them saying it was okay that she worked because she was divorced because her husband had cheated on her. And so that was kind of like my interpretation. So I was just kind of going with the flow. I didn't have
that template or that model.
Yeah. And I didn't have I didn't have this great strategy. First, I'm going to do this. And then I was kind of I'll just go. I don't know. I've literally am just mostly worried about my family.
Yeah.
And are my siblings going to survive this?
Yep.
Because I just got out and now I'm worried about them. So I don't know. I'm not really worried about this. So I remember, thinking about what am I going to do in college? You have to choose a major. And I was like, I don't know. I guess I need something that will have a job. I was really practical. I need something where I can earn money.
Yeah.
And so I remember being drawn to political science, but being we were not a political family. So I was there is nothing, there are no jobs in that area. And so I ended up pursuing journalism undergrad. I was like, I can write for a newspaper and make some money, right? That's a job. At least it's something I can it's
a trade.
Put down on it. Yeah. Piece of paper. Exactly. Yep. And so I did that undergrad, and it was actually when I was 19, I did a study abroad in France. I was minoring in French, and I did the study abroad. And I remember it was this big deal. My mom really wanted me to go because her family, her parents had met in France while they were on my grandpa was on a mission. My grandma was working for the U.S. Army. They'd met there. And so we had these like ties to France. So I went and did this French study abroad. And it was actually was the last time I'd see my mom. We decided to do this big trip. We did not do family trips. We didn't have probably the resources for it. And definitely my mom could not have traveled when I was young. And so, but we decided to do this big trip. They were going to drop me off in France for my study abroad. So my mom was going to come. We were bringing her parents. It was like this huge deal for my family. We're planning for months. And so we went to France, and I had probably a week with them before I went off to do my study abroad, and then they went back to Utah. And in this time, she was still super sick, but I'll never forget there's this monument in France at the end of the Champs-Élysées. If you know that street, I know you've been there. There's this Arc de Triomphe, and it's like the triumphal arch, right? Yeah. And for some reason, we had gotten tickets to walk up it. You can walk to the top. And there's this like windy staircase. And I will never forget, my mom decided she was going to walk up the Arc de Triomphe. And we were like, okay, this woman doesn't leave her bed. There's no way you can do this, Mom. Like, you can't do this. But she decided she wanted to do it. And I'll never forget her like walking up these stairs. And as we're going, she trips, she falls. And it's like packed with people. And as a teenager, you're kind of grappling with this moment of being really embarrassed. Like, you just fell in front of all these people, and this is embarrassing. And she was not a quiet, she was big and didn't look, she had, her entire everything had changed. She looked really different, And I remember being kind of embarrassed, but it also broke my heart to see this woman, like no one could have guessed what that moment was for her. This was her triumphal moment, And so they go back to Salt Lake. I finished my study abroad. And when I was there, it's funny. I've never talked about this in a public setting, but when I was there, I had this day that I was going to meet one of my grandma's friends from the war who lived in southern France. And I took a bus, no cell phones or anything. And I was sitting in this little park. I got there early, and I was sitting in this park before going in to meet this woman, Louise. And I was writing in my journal, and I had this super warm feeling come over me. And in my journal that day, I wrote if this were my last day on my internship or of my study abroad, I feel like I've been done. This is the last thing I need to do here. I go and meet this friend, we do tea, and then I go back to my apartment, and my roommates are sitting on the couch staring at the door, bawling. And I'm like, what's up? And they're like, you need to go call your dad right now. And I was just, I don't know, you're 19, you feel so invincible. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But I went back, I called my dad on a payphone, and he was like, Emily, your mom didn't make it. She had a surgery and she'd passed away. And, in that moment, you're just the whole world crumbles. I remember running out to the curb and sitting on this curb in France, and I speak French kind of, and bawling my eyes out. And this couple walking by saying what's wrong? And all I could say was ma mère est morte. My mom is dead. My mom is dead, and just feeling so alone, a world apart from where they all were, And in that moment, I'd felt like I'd had all this clarity. I was just talking to my son about this, but all this clarity about I need to go back to Utah. I need to take care of my family. I need to do it better. I need to lean in harder. I need to be a better, kind of mom to my little siblings and take care of my mom better. And then having that all kind of come crashing down in that moment, And then getting on this plane, it was the longest ride ever. I got the crappiest seat in the middle of this long row. And at the time I was really struggling with an eating disorder. I mean, it was just a rough time in life, and just sitting on this plane the entire time, just bawling my eyes out. My journal was just you can still see the pages are all warped from all of my tears and just from feeling so alone. And so I think I came home. I was a little crazy. We my siblings, we were all like in a bad spot. It had been a decade of like a struggle. And we actually didn't think she'd die. I don't know why. Now I'm like, of course she died. She was so sick, but we just didn't think she would, and coming back and kind of seeing my siblings and like having this moment of it's kind of like us versus the world. It felt that way. Obviously growing up and you see so many people with like struggles that are way beyond what I experienced.
No, but when you're in it, it's everything.
Yeah, it's everything.
Like I think all of us, your world is your world, especially your world as a teen.
Yeah. You don't, I had no perspective.
Nothing else exists. And so I think, that coupled with the hard.
Yeah.
But also like the loss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I do think there's some lack of perspective where you're like, even though it's hard, she's still my mom.
Yeah.
And still want her to be like.
Totally.
You just don't know what you don't know. And I think all of that stuff, it's like, even you describing I'm a mess or eating disorder, I'm like, I don't know how you weren't a mess. Like there's like some real, like, I don't know how you don't go somewhere to get control of something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like specifically around eating disorders, like so much of that is about control.
Totally.
And when life is just chaos.
Yeah.
And there's some piece of it that you can go like take control of. It's like, I don't know. Like I'm listening to this, just being like, it's amazing that one, I think your dad's a saint.
He's a freaking saint.
Looking at it from like a husband, me and Chelsea were going on like an offsite today, right after we talk right now, and we'll go fly to Montana and be intimate and play golf and plan like a beautiful life. And she's, my wife, she's a rock star.
Amazing.
Like she carries so much of the water in the family. And I'm just like, it's an amazing, beautiful team.
Yep.
To not have like a teammate for a decade in the heart of like both professionally and personally, I'm like, your dad.
Yeah.
Like, but then the kids, like you guys had to battle and you guys had to survive. And so it's, but again, going back to it, like that cliche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Totally.
Like you guys came out of that strong.
Yeah.
Like you guys had like some real like scar tissue, or like some real emotional muscle.
Yeah.
That like.
Yeah.
You can probably deal with some stuff.
Yeah.
Like you can handle some stuff going forward.
Yeah. I do think that is where the benefit came. It was like started picking up the pieces and you never see it for what it is in the moment. But now when I look back in life, I'm like, oh yeah, after she passed, it took me, probably 8 or 9 months to kind of like regroup but you just start picking up the pieces and putting together a life, especially when you think your life is going to be so different. I really thought I'd be like a lifelong caretaker of my mom, and so then having that big shift, it was so interesting. It like really forced me to look at like, who am I?
Did it give you permission to like, go? Because I think a lot of it that you don't have that permission. You're kind of like, you have a duty. Totally. Feel this like duty, and all of a sudden like it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you kind of released from your obligation or your responsibility, but whether it was yours or not, you were carrying it.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how stuff happens when it happens, because that 3 years later or 5 years later, it's probably a way different life.
Totally.
You know what I mean? You probably choose a way different crossroads.
Yep. And I think you're right. Like I've seen like a lot of beauty in it and kind of the tender mercies in that now that I'm older. Like that was it was a gift. It was a gift to have her and to have known her in full capacity for 9 years of my life. It was weirdly a gift to have another 9 years of my life, 10 years of my life, whatever, to know her at zero capacity, to see like some things are just beyond human control. We do not control for everything, And then it was a gift to maybe to have her go when she did, because it was like a critical point in my life, to be 19 years old and say, where am I headed? Like, where am I going in my life? Because I thought it was this one thing, but actually, like you said, I've become a little more free and I'm able to go and kind of pursue what I might want to, which I've never even given really that much thought because this has always been what I need to do.
Yeah.
And how many lives are lived like that? This is where I'm like, people who just drill down when they have a child who has, an extreme need or a disability, when they drill down and they are just, it is the most sacrificial, like beautiful thing you'll ever see in a life is someone who sacrifices their life for someone else. Because I think
it's kind of what life's all about. Like when you really boil it down, the last couple of years, I've got like deep into like this idea of identity.
Yeah.
And just really trying to like, I do it daily, but really try to examine like, who am I? Like, what is my identity? Like when I'm at my best, what do I aspire to be?
Yeah.
And like, who am I at my core? And when you kind of really drill down to that identity, I remember hearing President Nielsen, and he's talking about this at the end of one of his talks, and he talks about that there's three kind of cores to identity, and for me it was, but my ears perked up because I'd been spending a lot of time on it, and for him the three that were like most essential were that I'm a son or daughter of God.
Yeah.
I'm a child of the covenant, and I'm a disciple of Christ. And I think about like those three things and like really like the meaning. And like if we really have divinity inside of us,
yeah,
like if we really like have that belief that like we have unlimited potential,
yeah,
just everything's on the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in these self-limiting beliefs or this fear, this doubt, if you really kind of zone out and you have that belief,
yeah,
you shouldn't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
You should be trying more things. You should be taking more risk because you can do it. It's the same kind of thing that your mom instilled in you. It's like, you guys can do anything.
Yeah.
But then the second one is like, I'm a part of something special. I'm a part of a community. And you think about that community that, raised you, like
Yeah.
that's special and it's unique.
So unique.
Doesn't exist everywhere, but it existed for you and it saved you, And I think when I look at your life's work, it's you creating those communities for people that don't have them. But then the last one that I think is like, for me, equally as impactful, is, that I'm a disciple of Christ. Like when you really break that down to like what that means, what does it mean to be a student? What does it mean to be a disciple? And like, what type of life would I live if like that's really who I am? And it's a way different life.
Yeah.
Than if I don't have that core belief of my identity. And so I'm going kind of through those things and kind of coming back to where you're at. And like, you had some stuff on your identity that has served you really well.
Yeah.
Like you had to have like this belief that like, I can take care of myself and I can take care of people and I can serve and I can do it. And also like this like need to help others that are in pain. If you've experienced pain, you don't want others to feel the same thing, and you feel that urgency. And it's so, it's fun to see how like this equals this, something hard equals something really beautiful.
Yeah. And I have to say, Casey, it's funny. We had a conversation a while ago and you were kind of telling me about some of the meditation you do, and you were talking about this identity piece, and I never thought about it. And I was kind of, at the time, I was like in a really anxious moment in my life, in my career. And I remember texting you and you were like, yeah, you kind of said like, this is kind of what I do. And then I think about these identity pieces. And one of the interesting things that's come up for me, because I've actually like integrated that into my life, and it's been really cool. I'm not as good as you. I don't do it as diligently, but a couple times a week, I like try to take my 15 minutes and be kind of think through like, what are some things I'm thankful for?
Yeah.
What are like, who am I? Like what identifiers, like what identity do I have? And the one that came up for me, which is funny because I would say in my adult life, one of my greatest points of, I don't struggle with confidence, which is a gift. And I know it's a gift, except for in the realm of motherhood. I am like so self-conscious about like how I mother. I don't know why. Probably something from you. It's like all of us, we're just living out our trauma,
Yeah.
But I had this really distinct moment when I was like thinking about like, like, who do I want to be? And the word matriarch came to mind, which I thought was like so interesting because it's not a word that we use a lot.
Yeah.
But it's kind of this like word that encapsulates like the mother of like many things, you know, like, and caring for and taking responsibility for a lot of things, like holding people's pain and holding their difficulty for them.
Which is what you've done since you were like 11.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy. You know what I mean? Like, so many of those, like that process is just capturing in words what's reality.
Yeah.
All you're trying to do is just like,
yeah.
Like this stuff's going on a subconscious level.
Yeah.
For good and for bad. I think we have like some screwed up self-limiting beliefs.
For sure.
We've got some software running below the surface that doesn't serve us well. You know, when
Totally.
you go through eating disorders and scarcity and, you know, a lot of the, like so much of that stuff is, you know, learned behavior or
Totally.
some trauma or something that like we've got a bad software that we're operating on that if you don't actually take the time to like unwrite it, then you just like like life is pretty habitual.
Totally.
We repeat like these habits, good and bad, repeat themselves consistently over a long period of time. And if you never really like dig deep, and so it's fun to hear that you captured that because it's like you saying that out loud, I can see you get emotional. But for me, I'm like, oh, that's obvious. Like you've been doing that like your whole life. Like did that with your existing family. Sure, you did that with your roommates. Do it with your current family. And now you're, you know, matriarch over a lot of like an extended family, a bigger family, but it feels natural.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see you identify it. You know, sometimes the things that we're the strongest at, we're not the ones who actually see them, you know?
Yeah. That is, and
What's
it
that
is.
Stephen Covey, fish discover water last. Like it's, you know, sometimes when we're in it, you don't even realize you're in it.
Yeah, totally. Because it's everything around you.
Yeah.
Everything around you.
What other ones when you're going through and you're really saying, hey, this is who I am?
You know, it's interesting because the other two, it's like a mix of like, this is who I am and also just this is who I want to be. I think like if you pair these together, I've like had three that kind of recur for me. And I think it's the matriarch, but then I think I thought a lot about like being a learner. You know, like I want to always be learning, constantly learning from people around me. I am with people, including yourself, who are way, way smarter than me, who know things I don't know, who like have lived a life that I can't understand because it wasn't mine. And so I want to be like a constant learner.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one is like, I want to follow good. Like I want to learn, and then I want to lead by being a matriarch. I want to learn, and then I want to follow good. And those are those like kind of have been where I've landed with this. Like this is who I want to be. I think one of the things that I admire most in like, I think a lot about leadership because I didn't ever expect to be in a position of, and not that I even am, but you know, I didn't expect
you absolutely
to be.
are. like it's not being humble. You are like, you're a phenomenal leader. Like I actually wouldn't, even though I like you, I wouldn't have you on here if I didn't think you were a phenomenal leader.
Mm.
Like for me, like so much of this podcast is to identify excellence. And I just think you're excellent. I think like you have an ability to move people, which is leadership. Leadership is influence.
Yeah.
And you have that ability. It's special. It's a gift.
Yeah. And I feel so grateful because I didn't ever think there was nothing. I never grew up thinking like, oh, I'm going to really lead out on something or I'm going to really, it just was like I think what I didn't understand is that it was just like a part of who I was to just kind of like push, you know, and keep pushing and push and push and push. And I think like the leadership that there are a lot of different kinds of leaders. And we've even talked about this before. You can lead by fear, you know, you can lead by just sheer like power and demand, right? But you can also lead by like I think the leaders I respect the most have humility. They're ones who get that they don't get everything.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't understand everything, so I'm learning, you know, and I'm going to be better. And so I think like those are the kinds of leaders that I respect the most. It's the kind of leader I want to be.
For sure.
Is one that is like constantly like looking around and saying like, what can I learn from this situation? How can I be better? Never think never thinking you're perfect, because none of us are, like,
but
so
like
much
people,
to learn.
My experience with people is they're incredibly acute at calling out bullshit.
Yeah.
Like when there's fake, all of us have a very quick
just a little radar. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like that, I think that's why we're so drawn to authenticity.
Yeah.
It's because it's real. You know what I mean? And like, if we're really, all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we all have like major insecurities. We all have self-doubt. We all have like, so when somebody's able to like vocalize it, it's like this relief of, oh, sweet, I don't have to pretend either.
Yeah.
And now we can like actually get to work on fixing some stuff, where when there's pretense and when there's some of this other stuff, it like, you just don't get the same flow or the same authenticity, know, when somebody's that type of leader. So I'm same boat. I think about the leaders that I choose to follow and also the people that I'm drawn to. It's people that are authentic. People that are real and raw and
totally. And even a drop vulnerable. Just like, I'm going to put it on the line, right? Because you're right. Like those insecurities, we've all got them. But when they come across in like humility versus like, pride, it's just so much more.
So different.
I'm so much more drawn to people who come across and like, I've got stuff to learn. And I do. I love that.
So I want to kind of, we could literally take all day on this, but I want to sequence through it. So where did you meet Adam?
Okay. So I met Adam. I graduated BYU. No, I didn't. I did not graduate BYU before meeting him. I'm like, when did I meet that man? I met him my senior year of BYU.
Okay.
We were introduced by a friend who kept saying to me, I want to set you up with this big, nice redhead. And I was like, this is the worst.
I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling the ginger.
I'm like, I'm good. I'll just stick with these like cutie pies down at BYU. I'm good.
Yeah.
So it was like the worst. But I ended up meeting him at a party, and he is, Adam, he is the most down to earth, chill, easy, lovely human you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
He is just a good man to his core. And he does it without, it just is who he is, he's just like a very chill guy. So we got married right after my senior year in college. I graduated and we got married right then. I started doing some marketing stuff. Adam wanted to go to dental school. So he had a couple years of undergrad. He finished that up and we ended up moving to Ohio. And I went back and went to grad school. Adam was in dental school. So we were like,
you're kind of brushing over that, but I think that's like so cool. So like he's in dental school and you just decide I'm going to go like get a master's degree.
Yeah. It was random.
At
I
Ohio
felt like
State.
All of the rest of my life.
So
random.
Sick. Like it's so cool. Like you go back to, we're kind of going on this theme of identity, but like you've uncovered the like learner is something that's really important. But when you go back, it was always important. It was always there. You know what I mean? Like that was always a core piece of who you are.
Yeah, I will say like I was born with a very hefty degree of curiosity, which I think is like really has been a gift.
100%.
I would never think of that, but like you could set me in a room with anybody and I want to know their story. I'm just like naturally like, what is going on here? I want to understand what's happening. And so I think it was a gift. And so, it wasn't intended. I never thought I'd go to grad school. We just were moving and I was like, should I look at maybe going into grad school? It makes me sound so
kids now.
Yeah.
Did you have kids at that point?
No kids yet.
So it was still like fresh enough that it's like, let's do this. We all options are on the table.
Totally. And I got paired with the most. So I was able to get into grad school at the Ohio State University. But it's not that it's hard to get in there.
What did you study? Like what was
I did communication.
Okay.
And I had this like really cool experience where just on that note of like being extremely curious about people, I had this awesome professor I was paired up with. So I did this like graduate where I taught classes too at Ohio State. So
amazing.
I got to teach while I was in school. It was so cool. I was paired with this guy from LA, from Compton. He was Black and had a very different upbringing than I had. And so I was like his little TA. We did everything together. And it was like such a cool experience. Like when I look back at that, it was like, I remember just being like, thank you, God. I like wondered what the world was like outside of Holiday, Utah, where I grew up, And so I feel like just kind of this opportunity to move around and start meeting people who were outside of my framework and outside of like what I knew helped me to open my eyes so much. So I did communication, and then I moved on and worked for like some advertising agencies, and Adam was getting his, he was finishing dental school. And then I ended up having this conversation with a friend when I was back in Utah for Christmas one year about, how women who were in our religion and had to wear like a certain standard of clothing didn't have enough like access to like women's wear and like cute dresses, basically. So she and I decided to start a dress company.
Little entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Let's
I know.
Go.
But this is what I'm telling you. I was like, I just like never, I'm like, I'm not a leader. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm like, I can't help myself but just like jump into things,
Amazing.
So we started this dress company. It was called Shabby Apple. And we were really early on, like with the internet, like people were not, they were like, how do I order a dress online? I don't know if it will fit me. Like that was such a novel, like no one was talking about like dresses and like, how do you do stuff online? So anyway, we started this dress company, really leaned in on using, back then it was blogs. They were brand new.
Yeah.
Like this idea that the common person could just have a blog and write whatever the crap they wanted to. And so we leaned in, we would send them dresses. It was like the OG, like sending out to like social media influencers,
incredible
dresses. And it really helped us. So we grew this business for a few years. I had my first son, Tucker, like during this time.
Yeah.
And Adam and I had moved to Richmond, Virginia. He was doing a residency program in oral and maxillofacial surgery. So he's super busy. I've got this startup. I had my daughter, Berkeley, and then was pregnant with my son, Welch. And when I was pregnant with my third child, I'm working a lot of hours trying to work from home because I'm holding down the fort. We have no money. Adam's in residency. And the business is going really, really well, but it's obviously an overstimulating period in my life. And I end up getting diagnosed with heart failure. Like crazy, weird craziness. Like the same heart failure that like a 98-year-old has. Like the weirdest thing. It's the biggest fluke. I didn't drink. I didn't use drugs. I wasn't overweight. I, didn't have any of like the risk factors for it, but I'm diagnosed with it. And they're basically like, you've got a 33% chance of living, 33% chance of needing a heart transplant, and 33% chance that you're going to die. I'm like, well, the odds are not in my favor here, So I panic, especially with a mom who died young. I was like, I'm not going to make it. I just like, no, I'm going to die. So I ended up selling my part of the company to my partner. I was like, I can't go out just working, these long hours. And I focused in. I was like, I will give to my kids everything I can for however long I have to live. Right. So I end up just focusing in on them. It's a really hard time, like mentally and emotionally. But we get through it. I kind of hit all of my markers for recovery, and I end up being like the third that recovers and that gets better, which was the biggest gift ever. But it was a scary moment in my life that really made me kind of re-examine, like, what am I doing?
Like, how is this possible? My mom dies and now I'm dying.
I was so freaked out. I think I lived in a state of fear for 2 years.
Yeah, it's like
I'm going to just drop dead at any moment, I
think you're going to drop dead one of these days from like trauma from like these events. I'm just like, that stuff would mess you up for a long time. I'm just like, I can't even imagine. You know what I mean?
Also, so many good things too.
There's so much good, but I'm just like, that's hard. That's so hard.
That was hard.
That's hard for everybody. Like I always go to like the husband's lens.
Yeah.
But like, it's got to be hard for Adam.
Yes.
You're just like, I'm in
I'm
residency. I'm just grinding.
Get through the day.
We got these 3 young kids. I got the woman that I love, and holy smokes.
And she's just,
I'd completely forgot that
part
of your story, which is like so relevant.
Yeah, it is so crazy. It was so crazy. And so I like that was a rough time. And as you can imagine, you're just like financially at the brink, obviously health-wise at the brink, mentally at the brink. Like that was like probably the next time in my life that I was just like, yeah, I'm standing at an edge here. Like this is a moment and I'm either going to fall or I'm going to have to figure out how to build a bridge here because it's not working.
Yeah.
So we were able, I was able to recover. We moved to DC. Adam took a job in DC. I kind of got my first taste of like being in the world of DC politics and policy and seeing how that went down. And then a job opened up in Salt Lake for Adam. And I was very transportable. I'd started just doing some consulting again as I got better. I started doing like some communication consulting. We moved back to Salt Lake. And then, I mean, I could talk for 15 years, but the kind of long story is we ended up adopting these two adorable kids. Who
So where did that come up? So
that came
Adam
up,
finishes up.
Yeah.
He's obviously like today's like one of like the best surgeons in the state.
Yeah, he's
so he's got a sweet career, So like life goes from like we're hand to mouth, just getting by to like we actually have like a nice little setup.
Yes. Life goes from like Adam once buying a Chipotle burrito and me being like, you cheated on me. That's $8. We don't have $8.
How sick would it be if like a Chipotle burrito today was $8? Like that's a little like inflation kicking in.
Yeah, no kidding.
I hate those days again.
You're right. So life got more comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's got a real job. He's doing well.
Yeah.
It's like the first time in our marriage that I'm feeling like the financial like burden is not on me.
Yeah.
And that was nice. It was nice in that like, okay, he's gonna, whether or not I'm making money, he's making money. And so we're like,
was that like okay for you? Like, or like, were you so used to carrying that burden that it was tough to like let it go?
It was tough to let it go. I just realized like when we talk about identity, by nature, I'm a worker. I just am. I'm going to grind until the day I die. I think just because I don't even know, it's just the DNA, And so I think I was a little weirded out because then I had like a totally different set of social expectations put on me. Like, do you know how many women would like love to be married to a man that could provide for them? You should be more grateful. You should be at home. You should, and that was, I didn't realize it because I was like, I know I should. I kind of like just took it all in. Like, I know I should. Why am I so pulled to kind of like having something outside of the home as well? And I could not explain it because I knew I should be grateful and I felt grateful, but I also just felt this pull. And so I think it was a weird identity moment for me.
I think those shoulds are like super dangerous.
Oh, amen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like you just, like you've got one life to live and it's your life.
Yeah.
And I think there's a book I'm reading right now that's really fascinating. You should read it.
What is it?
It's the 10x is easier than 2x.
Huh.
It's by this guy, I think it's Dan Martell. I can't remember who actually wrote it.
Yeah.
But he talks about the gap and the gain. And the gap is kind of like what should be. Like it's expectation of the future or comparing what you have today versus what it should be. And the gain is like actually like being present and recognizing all the good.
Yeah.
But also all the, milestones. And he talks about the difference in happiness in living in the gain versus living in the gap. And he also talks about, and I've actually thought about it a lot because I think naturally as an achiever, you have this push and pull between I should or I want to be grateful for what I have and where I'm at. But I also have aspirations to go like, I've got music to play and I want to go play it.
Yeah.
But I think that idea of like, it should be one way, but you want something different, there's conflict. And I think just getting really comfortable, just saying, this is something that I want.
Yeah.
And that's his whole point in this is if you can actually get to the point in life where you can call out, I want this. It gives you permission to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
instead of like going for it without actually identifying that I want it and then feeling guilt for wanting it. And it's a fascinating little process that I've tried to go put a framework around it for myself and say, what do I want?
Yeah.
Like, what do I actually want, like, unapologetically in my life? Whether it's selfish, whether it's, for my family, for my, like, but what desires and what dreams do I have? And can I get comfortable with those and just want them regardless of who cares?
Yeah.
And I think it's freeing or liberating to just be able to say, my life is my life and I'm going to go for this. But it feels like in that moment, there was some living in the gap, which is other people's expectations
or thoughts or judgments or whatever.
Which is so funny because, like, when you really boil down to it, other people actually didn't have those at all. Other people 100%. Don't care.
100%.
So
exactly. And like the random like comment that you're like, what they're really saying is, it's like, they might not even really be saying that, but it is. Yeah. So it was that was a little bit of a weird transition for me. Took me a second to like get my feet under
it feels
myself
like it
again.
It feels like it would, like going from crisis mode and almost survival mode.
Which weirdly, I think I'm kind of good at.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's like, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to dig the
whether you're good at it
or just
whether
have
you're
to
just
do it.
comfortable in it is kind of two different things. I think like, regardless of if you're good at it or not, you had lived in it for a long time.
Yeah. And it was just what I knew. So it's just like, we're just going like every day is something. So it was actually weird to like with comfort and ease, I got more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why, but like I started to feel it. Like I need more. I want more. I need to do more. I have more to give.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
You felt it. You felt it calling
so
to
badly.
You. Yeah.
Yeah. To the point where it was like, it got to the point where it was like, man, I was waking up at like 2 a.m. every morning. Like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what is it that I need to do? Like, I can feel that I need to do something and I like can't identify what it is. And so it took me a minute. I actually, like when you talk about, you're good about this, like, I actually tried to like systemize, like how do I decide what I need to do? So during these like crazy sleepless nights, I would start like writing down like, okay, what is everything I've ever thought of? Like what is, what are like all of my options in life that I need to do? And some of them were like, I need to start another business. One of them was like, oh, maybe I need to run for office. One was like, man, something is up with the nonprofit world. We could scale for good in such a better way. One of them was like, I hosted a morning show before. I was like, should I go back and do something like that? Like what should I do? So I made this list of like these 5 things. And then I was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to burn it down one at a time until like I'm going to burn it down until there's one thing left standing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what I'm going to do. So I started just like clicking down on like, each of these things. And the thing that I realized was it was that nonprofit piece. Like
that's what was calling to you.
100%. I became like kind of like obsessed with this idea that our nonprofits that we have on the planet Earth are freaking amazing. These people are saints. They do incredible work. What I could not understand was that like solving for the masses. Like, how do you do good in a way that it isn't like I can go to a homeless shelter and feed a meal, right?
Yeah.
The most people I'm impacting that night, 150 people, right? Like that's 150 people. That's great. That's amazing. That's amazing for one person to impact 150 people. But the reality is we need to impact millions if we think we're going to leave this world any different than how we found it. And so I was like, okay, so there's a scaling problem with nonprofits. The other thing was like, there is like an intersection problem, like where nonprofits are intersecting in a life, it's usually after a problem has happened. So it's like, I'm going to go build a homeless shelter. We need them. There are so many people experiencing homelessness. It is heartbreaking and terrible and should never happen. But we're building these things on the back end, or we're running a coat drive,
the
right?
Reactive, yeah.
Yeah. How many coat drives do we have to hold before no one needs a coat again, right? The problem is like, we're never solving for it. We're not solving the problem. It's an important thing to do, but we're not solving for it. And so, and these things, if I die tomorrow, they go away. Like they're going to go away. If I die, I take all of the goodness with me, right?
Yeah.
Like if it not, like any of us, if we die, we take like any of the good we have, we take it with us. So how do you make something that lasts? So this was like a formula that I was just like mulling over for so long. I tried a bunch of different things, different ways to like enact good, but it really came down to this moment. I'd been reading, because of my extreme curiosity, I'd been reading about, like, I love to read about life experiences that are not mine. So I'd read a lot about like poverty in the United States. What does it look like to grow up in like a really low income home? What does it look like to grow up poor and white in America? What does it look like to grow up poor and Black in America? What does it look like to grow up poor and Hispanic in America? Like looking at all these like different angles. And I was really getting into this idea of apartheid. This was a rule of law that was in South Africa. My dad and my stepmom, who was the most lovely woman, went to go serve a mission for our church in South Africa. And so I was like, we were going to visit them, and I was like, oh, I should really know something about that country before we go. So I got into apartheid, and really quick version of it is, it was this kind of system of government that made it so 90% of the population had 10% of the wealth, 10% of the population had 90% of the wealth. That would be fine as long as there's a lot in that, there's tons and tons of wealth and everybody's able to access good things like education, healthcare, those things. So we get to South Africa and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. This is like so insane. Go into this museum about apartheid, walking through these halls. There are like all of these like pictures, artifacts, all these like cool things from this time of apartheid. It only ended in the 1990s. So it's like relatively recent.
Yeah.
It's so insane. And things like, and I get to this wall, my kids are in there, they're running around being insane. And there's this huge brick wall. And on the wall, there are these like black plaques. And on each plaque, I get closer and I'm like, what is this? It's an act or a law. Like it's an individual policy that has been enacted, that had been enacted by the government there. I always like in my mind, I guess I'd never thought about it. I was like, there's probably just some evil dictator that's like, you people will not go to school. You people will not be able to become doctors. You people won't be able to do this. No. It was just a group of people who were like, hey, you know what? This population needs to carry ID. That in and of itself is not a big deal. The same population, you guys need a curfew. Okay, that's fine. You can work around a curfew, right? Okay, now you can only be educated to high school. Now only till third grade, right? So like little by little, this massive group of people has their rights like diminished to like, there is no opportunity. There's no ways to succeed. And so then you can imagine what happens to crime, what happens in all these other areas, because human potential.
Bad policy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our greatest, economic mobility, all those things is tied to human potential.
Yeah.
So if we're not capitalizing on human potential, that's on us, right?
Yeah.
So I have that was my aha moment of being like, policy.
That's what I want. This is where I want to go spend my time.
People are not using policy to do good in the world. And that is how I'm going to spend my time.
Yeah.
So that's where the Policy Project, which is a nonprofit that I run, was born, just from that moment.
Talk to me about what you're the most proud of.
I'm the most grateful for that moment where I could see that policy could shift this and that we could think of policy outside of politics, because so I just think that that's setting a totally new standard.
And that was in South Africa.
Uh-huh.
Like, this is just an insight just from listening to your story. You've had like some life-changing moments internationally.
I know, that is weird.
Like whether it's like
never thought about that.
Sitting in a train in France or like, and even nationally, but like, in Virginia, like just kind of away from home.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like maybe there's some clarity.
Fascinating. Yeah, maybe you're separated and you have like, you can actually step away from life and anyway.
No, you're probably right.
Fascinating little insight.
Because actually you're right. Like I did know that about South Africa. I was like, stuff is going on in America. I just can't see it because I live in it.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting and I would say
so going back to like
noticing
what are you
that, like,
the most proud of? Yeah.
So I would say that I'm most proud of just the idea of it, because I think it will change. Like I've had, there are a lot of other states that are reaching out and wanting to get stuff, an organization like this set up. And so we're trying to figure out, how do you grow this? Do you take it to other states or how do you do that? So I'm super excited about that because the potential for good is insane. But when we just talk about like, what am I most proud of? A very early project, we called it the Period Project. And it was this initiative to get period products like tampons and pads into every single school in the state of Utah to be offered for free. So we're talking kindergarten through 12th grade, every single bathroom. And I think the thing that makes me the most proud about it is up until that point, it required a law, right? Like it required a bill with the Utah legislature. It required millions of dollars from philanthropists, literally millions. And it required like the community being like, it's time. Let's do this for our girls. And so I think like those had never been married in such a way. The legislature, like there was zero policy around this before, zero, which is insane because think of COVID. Like COVID was a public health issue, right? We all had to wear masks within months. Like we solved our schools were shut down within days, right? Masks were within maybe weeks. We have policy around everything we do. Like these chairs.
It kind of takes a crisis. It kind of takes like a legit crisis.
And if there isn't a crisis, you have to create one, right? You have to like create a movement.
But that's leadership. I think, when you're talking, like, I think ultimately, like the reason I've always, again, we haven't known each other too long, but I've followed you and I just love watching leaders lead. And I think that momentum and that movement and that awareness is leadership. It's getting a group of people communicating, which you're obviously good at, and then selling. Like you're like getting people to commit to do something, which is hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And this is where I admire anybody who's ever had a sales background because I'm like, oh man, that is it's
thankless work. And like you kind of work. Have people tell your baby's ugly, and it's like it's not fun,
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah. I literally say like I try to put myself up by saying like, you're getting so much better at rejection, Emily. Good job. Like, I was so uncomfortable with rejection before. Now it's like, it's every day, people. So it is. So that was kind of like a magical moment in time. Yeah. And now like, we ran a study that was about 4 years ago. We ran a study this last year and it was like 78% of girls who are in school, 78% of girls who are in school feel more comfortable talking about periods now.
Wow.
And it's like, we had the physical change. The period products went into the schools first year. We were like, I got an insane group of people. They all leaned in. Everybody helped. It was awesome. We got it done. The law changed and the period products there. But what's hard to change is culture.
Yeah.
And the fact that these girls that now we can just like talk openly about periods. I mean, I just like, all I want on the back of my tombstone is just like a period drop. Like if we did it, people, like this cool. It was a big deal. So that's probably the thing that I'm just like so grateful for. And now we're moving, it turns out I'm okay in a crisis and I'm okay in like a startup. I love the burn. I love the burn.
Yeah.
I have like a new business, a new idea, a new. But I've realized that I'm entering like a new chapter in my life. And that new chapter is like, and can I make this sustainable?
Yeah.
Because this has to live beyond me.
Yeah, which I think is like ultimately like when Chelsea and I think about like nonprofit.
Yeah.
And where we want to invest our dollars. I think it ultimately comes down to sustainability.
100%.
Like what you want is to invest into something that has longevity, that can continue to go, you know what I mean? Or you're
spinning, right?
Yeah, you're eating your seed corn. It's like we'd love to build a garden that continues to produce fruit forever or for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately like just you identifying that I need to go to the root cause.
Yeah.
Is, I can't remember who the philosopher that said kind of for everybody hacking at the roots.
Yes.
There's one that's chopping or that's hacking at the leaves. There's one that's actually cutting the root.
100%.
And it's like, how do you like go to the root of what the issue is?
Yeah.
And it feels like policy is that. You're building in the infrastructure.
That's exactly
it. And the long-term funding mechanism to go support it.
Yep. That's exactly it. It's changing the system. It's hard to understand because the word policy is big and most of us are not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, listen, I knew nothing about it. Basically, any of us, if I can learn, you can learn. But it is like, I think a couple years ago, last year, we worked on child sexual abuse prevention. And that one was so interesting because it's the root cause. I mean, you would not cause it. It is a part of the root problem in like drug addiction, homelessness, inability to stay in a long-term relationship, teen pregnancy.
For sure.
It's like in all of these things that we're trying to solve for, and we're trying to solve for it by building a building. And it's like, we do need buildings, for homeless shelters, but it's like, but what if we could stop that little girl
like
from being, sexually assaulted by her mom's boyfriend tonight?
Beautiful insight.
Yeah.
Like it's actually like incredible that you could, that you go back to the root cause and say, how do we actually go build something? And I think on that one, most of it's awareness, right? It's just talking about it. It's probably similar to periods.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that's comfortable to talk about.
No. People just,
what I mean? And so to normalize it and make it make it front and center, you shine light on something that isn't used to having light shined on it, and it disappears,
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's how these things die. They die when we say, we're done. We're done with it. And so we're going to talk about it. And it's hard to do that, but it is probably one of the most important things that we can do in our lifetime is just be open about these things, because that's how we really end up alleviating a ton of suffering.
Yeah. Man, I could go on all day.
Me too.
I truly could. And so I think that's probably, an excuse for us to do this again and continue to follow what you're pursuing. I want to end with this.
Yeah.
Talk to me about faith. Talk to me about your faith journey, where you're at in that journey, and kind of how it's influenced the ride.
Yeah. I mean, I would just say that it's been so core for me. I think it has been one thing I've realized as I've gotten older is that I can see how much growing up having faith made me believe like some of those core beliefs you said before, like a daughter of God or like a disciple of Christ, this perfect human who had perfect empathy, who knew when to throw out the law and knew when to love, like those kind of tenets have absolutely changed. They've changed my life to a degree that I can't even I just know I would never be where I am without them. I think my life could still be good. It could still be great, but they've had an endless, kind of an endless impact on me as I've gotten older, and I've seen some of the harsh realities, when you're dealing with these issues, you see the worst case scenario, you see a 3-year-old who's been raped, and it's that is, I can understand why people say there is not a God, because a God would never let that happen.
Yeah.
When you see that, you're I see what you're saying. What it's done for me is created more of a need for Christ in my life, because I need to know that there is a great equalizer. I need to know that 3-year-old, when she gets to the other side, has good things coming to her. Because without that, I just don't know how we don't all just fold over and die. And so I think it's that is a great basis of hope. I think that we have a ton of room in our faith, in all religion, to see the realities and talk about them more.
Yeah.
And be more loving to people who have had different life experiences from us. But ultimately, I would say, it's been a massive pillar. It's been a cornerstone in my life, and I got lucky to have it,
So you fire me up.
Yeah.
I'm super proud to call you my friend.
Thank you.
And I'm absolutely cheering for you as loud as I can cheer.
Thanks.
For all the stuff that you're pursuing, both inside your family walls, but also, in the public domain. It's just, I love what you're about, and I love the energy that you bring. This is another thing that I would say that I love about you.
Yeah.
I love that when you show up to a party, you just dance.
I do dance.
Honestly, it's one of the most endearing traits that you have.
I think my kids hate
that
it
you
so
just
much.
full blown send it like a
I do.
15-year-old.
If you turned on the right song right now, I'd do it right now.
No, it's so great. And it's I've seen it happen so many times. And then you see all these moms that just all of a sudden follow. And I really do think there's two things that I love about that. One of it is the ability to just be present.
Yeah.
And just be in the moment and enjoy life.
Yeah.
But the second one is it gives others that may not have the same confidence or the same confidence to be able to enjoy life and to let go. And so that'd be kind of my advice to you, or, my wish is that you never stop dancing and you never stop leading.
Thank you. Casey, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being such a good friend.
This podcast is brought to you by Sandlot Partners.